Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Carol from Makery on the Hill. You can find me over on Instagram as C Shriver 870, and I hope you will join me over there if you don't already. Follow me over there. I share all my quilting makes, just all the things I love, some of my teaching engagements, just all sorts of things. So I do hope you will join me, like I say, if you don't already. Today I'm going to walk through how I use the foundation paper piecing pads, and in front of me today I have one that is published by Fat Quarter Shop, the It's So Emma division from their pattern company, and the size that I'm using today is the 3-inch size. These come in a variety of sizes, all kinds of foundation paper piecing pads of papers they have over at Fat Quarter Shop. So if you go on their website, you will see lots and lots of goodies that they have. And I love them because I love sewing on the paper. I love sewing straight on the lines. I think there's no better accurate way to get nice straight seams than sewing straight on a line. Also, then when you trim up to square up your block, you're trimming up pretty much right on the lines, and it just comes out super accurate. So it's just I enjoy doing it. I know it's not for everybody, but I think one of the things that some people get confused about is just getting started. So that's what I'd like to walk through today, is how I go about getting started, and give some pointers that might help you along the way. This is one of the papers from the pad, and so you can see that it is printed on one side and the other side is empty or blank, just the wrong side of the piece of paper. You also notice that it has numbers. The numbers are the order that you will be placing your fabrics. So I will start by placing my square in the middle, which happens to be number 1. That's where I start. Then I add 2 and 3, and then 4 and 5. For those of you who perhaps have never made an economy block before, or a square and a square block before, you will notice that opposite corners are always sewed on. So we have 2 and 3, and then 4 and 5. You do not go around because of the way the seam intersections would be made. So you go opposites and then opposite here. So as you get started, I would like to point out that right inside the front cover are the directions for paper piecing. And I just sort of put my hand over here, but the directions are excellent. One thing that I would like to say is that the way I do it, I sort of skipped step 2, 2 and 3, and kind of go straight to number 4. So let me just walk you through what I do. As I place number 1, my number 1 is going to be just the background fabric for me on the project that I'm going to be working on. And so there's really no right or wrong side to it. I like to take and eliminate a step that is in the directions of folding and creasing my paper to align this square accurately. I cut my square that 2 5/8 inches. So I measured this and added a 1/4 inch seam allowance and came up with 2 5/8 inches for this particular pad. And so that's what I cut all of these. So I know that if I put this down, I'm going to have my center covered, and I'm going to have an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance on each of these side triangles. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in my light box because I like working with my light box. I don't have a window in my sewing room, and so it's kind of sometimes hard to see the lines. So by using my light box, I can see through the paper, and I'll show you why. Okay, so if I take my square of fabric and I put it centered over my 1 on this right side, and then I put my number 2 down, which is going to be right sides together. What have I just done? I just covered up the line that I'm going to be sewing on. I can't see it anymore. So this is a tricky part for a lot of people with foundation paper piecing. So when you build your fabrics, you're actually building them on the wrong side of your paper. So this square is going to be centered over the number 1, but it's on the wrong side of my paper. So that's why I wanted my light box so that I could see through there to what I'm doing. I'm going to take just an Elmer's glue stick, and I'm going to put a dot of glue right there in the center. And I'm going to take this square. If it was a print fabric, I'm going to have the print so that I can see the print, meaning face up. And I lay this down so that I can center it over those lines. And actually, I can almost see better with my light box if I put my fabrics on the paper, plain paper side. But if you can see there, I can see those lines through so that I can make sure that I have pretty even seam allowance on all 4 sides. And I just kind of give that little press down so that it's stuck in place. And then I'm ready to put one of my corner pieces on. When you cut your corners, the directions tell you what size square you're cutting, and you cut 2 squares. And then you're going to take and cut them in half using a ruler and your rotary cutter in half diagonally from corner to corner. So you end up with 2 squares. You got 4 corners, so that's why you needed to cut 2. And I have my other set here that I'm going to show you in a minute. But I'm going to take and I'm going to put this on 2 and 3. So I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to center it on here so I can kind of just eyeball and make sure that that looks like it's in the center at my little point, and about the same amount of fabric hanging over both corners. These are made or cut, the dimensions that are given in the pattern directions are oversized so that you have plenty to work with and have plenty to trim down. So I put a couple pins in because I'm not next to my machine, and so by the time I get to my machine, I don't want it to move and get, I want to make sure that I have it nice and aligned. And so then I can go ahead and sew because we're doing opposite corners, and so I can go ahead and place my number 3 at the same time. And again, I'm going to put a couple pins in just so that I can get to my machine and not lose my alignment. If you think that's going to get caught in the middle, you can always kind of like flip those up there. But when you go to your machine, then you're going to flip this back over so that you can see your line. So when you sew, you're going to be sewing past this because you got to get your seam allowances stitched in. So I'd like to start clear off the line here. So I like to put my first couple stitches in here and just extend that line, and I'm coming straight, sewing right smack on the line over into this empty area here. I turn my paper around in my machine and I do the same thing, starting off the line or outside the box, we'll call it, stitching right straight on the line. Don't stop there, keep on coming right off the line. Whenever you're foundation paper piecing, always lower your stitch length. It helps to perforate the paper so it comes out, plus it's just a tinier stitch because when you're pulling the paper off, it's easy to pop your stitches out, not meaning to, and you lose a couple stitches. So just you want a nice tight stitch. So I like to stitch with somewhere between a 1.5 and a 1.8 stitch length. And so let me show you what this looks like. So this is what it looks like from this side, but remember we sewed with the line facing up. So you can see I said I start outside the box area. So my first couple stitches are actually out here. I stitched nice and straight, right smack on the line. Instead of stopping there, I extended my line past the box, cut my thread out there. Turned it around in my machine, started again, outside the box, stitching right on the line, not stopping there, but stitching on past and extending my stitching over here outside the box again. Once you have those stitched, then you're going to press those out. Again, make sure that you have them out, clear out to the seam line. Make sure they're nice and flat. Some people like to use just one of those like wallpaper rollers, seam rollers, to press it down. I keep an iron right by my machine. I like to use the iron. I just feel like it just does a nice job. So I like to just go ahead and give it a press with the iron. And then you're going to put the next two pieces on, and I'm going to take these off just because this is, I can show you. So to do 3 and 4, actually this is, or 4 and 5, I mean, so this is 4, doesn't really matter here, but 4 and 5. So again, I'm going to center it up about the same amount hanging over there. That should be pretty much in the center. And you can either, when you flip it around, you need to hold it nice and steady if you're at your machine, or else put a couple pins in to get used to what you're doing if this is all new to you. And then number 5, you're always putting right sides together of your fabric. Whenever you make a seam, you know, usually 9 times out of 10, or probably more than 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, you are putting right sides together. So that's nothing new. So again, before I sew it, so that I can see my lines, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to sew it from the printed side so that I can sew right on the line. See right where I'm supposed to be. So when I have sewed all 4 and 5, again, I take it to the iron and I press these corners. See, that's where it's been stitched. I just press my corners out. And so now I'm ready to trim it down. You can see that it looks a little messy here around the corners, and that's okay because, like I said in the beginning, these are made oversized. I like to, instead of just trimming straight on the line, I always like to use, I do have these are coming out 3.5 inches. The pad, remember, was 3-inch finished. And so that means that these should measure 3.5. And so I have a 3.5-inch ruler. And so I just find it real easy to put my ruler down and do my trimming. Should be coming out pretty much right on the line. And you will notice that when you trim, you're going to have from this point out, should be your 1/4 inch seam allowance. From that point out, your 1/4 inch seam allowance. So they just come out real nice and even, nice and straight, nice corners, so just a nice square. To pull your papers off, sometimes I think it's about easiest to start from the last pieces in. So 4 and 5 were my last pieces on. So if I start and pull off 4 and 5 first, when I pull them off, I like to kind of hold my thumb there. As I mentioned just a minute ago, it's easy to pop stitches out by yanking too hard on those corner pieces. Sometimes if it's a long piece, I even try to get those little triangles. I don't like to leave those little areas left in there. If it's a long piece, sometimes it's easy to like rip here in the middle and then go from that way out, and then that way I think it pops less seams. So I think it's really easy to do. And then there was that little bit of glue there, so sometimes your paper gets stuck a little bit. Not going to hurt anything. I just try to pick off all the little pieces. But there's my 3-inch finished it will be. So right now it's measuring 3 1/2 inches. See you next time. Leave me any comments or questions that you might have. Bye-bye.